The air in the grand amphitheater of the Zenith Institute of Xenobiology was thick with boasts. It was the most prestigious school of its kind in the known galaxy, and its students were the best of the best. They were also, at the moment, engaged
in a verbal arms race of monstrous proportions. My family has secured a Vorthan spine ripper for my presentation.
It's neurotoxin, Homer.
Can paralyze a herd of grazers in under 5 seconds. A truly magnificent hunter. From across the room, a gaseous
being named Kilnara swirled with a contemptuous purple hue. Paralysis is so inefficient, Moxai.
Drake from the volcanic rings of Theta Centauri. They don't paralyze their prey, they incinerate it. Their breath can melt through the hull of a scout ship. The discussions grew more and more heated, a terrifying catalog of galactic lethality. There were mentions of acid-spitting beetles from acid rain worlds, void lurkers that existed partially in subspace, and crystalline wasps whose stings could shatter molecular bonds. It was like a contest to see who could bring the most creative form of death to show and tell. And through it all, one student remained conspicuously quiet. Fiona Walsh sat in the back row, her deceptively fragile human frame dwarfed by the alien architecture designed for beings 3 times her size, while her flint of her mouth. Her smile suggested she knew a secret no one else did. Another student then challenged the human directly, of her mouth, the kind of smile that suggested she knew something no one else did.
What about you, human?
Called out Bumptel, their skin now cycling through curious shades of blue and green. What kind of predators does your home world produce? The room fell silent. In the months since Fiona had arrived as part of the first human
student exchange program, she'd proven herself to be, well, odd. Didn't quite cover it. She had this unsettling
habit of finding humor in situations that should have been terrifying, and she possessed an almost supernatural ability to remain
calm when everyone else was panicking. Just last week, when a containment breach had released a swarm of carnivorous nanobots
into the dining hall, she'd calmly finished her lunch while everyone else evacuated in terror. Oh, you know, Fiona.
Earth has its fair share of interesting creatures. But what are you going to bring?
Pressed.
Oxy, his crystalline structure pulsing with curiosity.
Fiona's smile widened just a phrase. The way
she said it, with just a hint of something that might have been anticipation, or possibly dark amusement, sent an
involuntary shiver through several of her classmates. There was something about humans that unsettled most of the galaxy. Maybe
it was their binocular vision that evolved from persistence hunters. Maybe it was their unnaturally white teeth, clearly designed for ripping flesh. Or maybe it was their disturbing tendency to smile when they were planning something. Come now, Professor Vela interjected.
Surely you can give us a hint. Academic curiosity, you understand.
Well, Fiona said, leaning back in her chair with the kind of relaxed confidence that suggested she was entirely comfortable, being the center of attention. Let's just say that Earth's most successful predators might not be what you expect. Meaning,
prompted Chilnara, her gaseous form swirling with impatient yellow streaks. Meaning Fiona replied that sometimes the most dangerous hunters are
the ones you'd never see coming. The classroom fell into an uneasy silence. There was something in Fiona's tone.
Not threatening exactly, but carrying an undercurrent of knowledge that made everyone suddenly aware they might be missing something important.
Professor Valara cleared her throat with a sound like grinding kitan. Very well. I look forward to your presentation, Miss
Fiona. Class dismissed. Remember, live specimens only, proper containment protocols, and try not to get yourselves killed before presentation day.
The paperwork is absolutely dreadful. As students began filing out, chattering excitedly about their chosen predators, Fiona remained seated for
a moment longer. She pulled out her communication device and typed a brief message. Package ready for delivery. 2. Specimens as requested. Handle with care. They're more dangerous than they look. She hit send and gathered her materials. That mysterious smile never leaving her face. In the weeks since she'd arrived at Galactic University, she'd noticed something interesting.
About her fellow students. For all their talk of deadly predators and apex hunters, they seem to have a very
specific idea of what dangerous looked like. Sharp teeth, obvious claws, intimidating size, aggressive behavior, all the hallmarks of what
her grandfather might have called honest predators. But Fiona had grown up on a world where the most successful
hunters were often the ones that seemed completely harmless, right up until they weren't, where evolution had favored subtlety. Over spectacle, intelligence over intimidation, and patience over brute force. As she walked down the corridor toward her dormitory,
she passed groups of students still discussing their choices. She heard mentions of creatures with acid blood, beings that could phase through matter, hunters that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. All very impressive, certainly. All very obviously dangerous. All very
amateur. Her communication device chimed with a response. Delivery confirmed. Specimens are settling in well. Looking forward to the group
show. Fiona's smile turned distinctly predatory.
Oh, there was definitely going to be a show. Back in her dorm.
Her roommate, a peaceful herbivore from the Tieti system, looked up nervously from her studies. "You've been getting a lot of packages lately," she observed, her large eyes darting toward the corner where several discreet containers sat humming.
Just some things from home, Fiona replied cheerfully. Nothing to worry about.
"They're making sounds."
Are they?
The narrator explained this was just her presentation specimens settling in, a fact which horrified her roommate. "Possibly purring. That's just them settling in." "Them? My presentation specimens!" Her roommate's complexion shifted to a pale shade.
Of green. They're alive. Very much so. Fiona sat down at her desk and began reviewing her notes. Don't
worry though. They're perfectly safe. The way she emphasized the word safe somehow made it sound less reassuring, rather safe.
Than more. What? What kind of predators are they? What are you looking for?
Her expression carried something that might have been pity. The most successful kind.
Convinced their prey to love them. Presentation day dawned with the kind of electric tension that suggested either someone was
about to make scientific history, or the emergency medical teams were going to earn their hazard pay. The biosciences amphitheater
had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, reinforced with additional containment fields, and equipped with enough emergency response equipment
to handle a small-scale alien invasion. Professor Valara stood at the podium, her compound eyes scanning the assembled students.
With the practiced gaze of someone who'd spent decades ensuring that academic curiosity didn't accidentally trigger galactic incidents.
"Before we begin," she announced, her mandibles clicking with authority, "I want to remind everyone that we have full emergency protocols." Before the presentations began, the professor reminded the class. He confirmed that full safety protocols were active for the event.
This included medical teams standing by. Containment specialists were also monitoring all energy signatures to ensure complete student safety.
Provide optimal viewing angles, while maintaining safe distances from whatever nightmares their classmates had decided to drag into the lecture
hall. The air hummed with nervous energy and the subtle vibrations of various containment systems working over time. Additionally, as the professor continued, "I want to emphasize that today's presentations are being recorded for the Galactic Archives. This data will be invaluable for future xenobiological research, assuming we all survive long enough to analyze it."
Rippled through the audience, though the humor was somewhat undermined by the very real possibility that survival wasn't guaranteed. Mox.
"Hi. You're first." The crystalline student rose from his seat with the fluid grace of someone whose body was essentially living mineral. His specimen container, a heavily reinforced cube crackling with energy barriers, levitated beside him as he approached the
presentation area. "Behold," he announced with theatrical flair, "the Vorthan Spine Ripper." The containment field shimmered and dissolved, revealing
what could only be described as nightmares, given physical form. The creature was roughly the size of a large predatory
bird. But where birds had feathers, this thing had crystalline spikes that seemed to bend light around them. Its eyes,
all 6 of them, glowed with an inner fire that suggested either advanced biasness.
The shadow worlds of the Voran system, Moxai continued, his voice carrying the pride of someone showing off a particularly impressive collection piece. These hunters can phase partially through solid matter, allowing them to strike through armor, walls, and most
conventional defenses. As if on cue, the creature demonstrated its unique ability. It casually reached one translucent claw through the
supposedly solid floor of its containment area. Several students instinctively recoiled from the display. The creature's biology was indeed formidable. Induces complete paralysis within 2.3 seconds of contact, followed by systematic dissolution of nervous tissue. Death typically occurs within 6 minutes, though the victim remains conscious throughout the entire process. Excellent work, Professor Vithera noted,
making rapid entries on her data pad while keeping a respectful distance from the containment area.
Adaptation is particularly fascinating. How do they manage to maintain molecular cohesion while altering their density? As Moxai launched into
a detailed explanation involving quantum mechanics and interdimensional physics, the rest of the class tried very hard not to think
about what it would feel like to be so completely vulnerable. The presentations continued with steadily escalating levels of complexity.
Steadily escalating levels of creative lethality. Buntel unveiled something that looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a nuclear
reactor, a translucent creature that fed on electromagnetic radiation and could generate focused EMP bursts powerful enough to shut down
a starship's life support systems.
Are essentially living weapons. They drift through space, appearing harmless until they encounter technology. Then they drain all available
power and use it to reproduce exponentially. The creature in question pulsed with soft, almost hypnotic light, occasionally generating small
electrical arcs between its tentacles. It was, the class had to admit, oddly beautiful in the way that supernovas and
black holes were beautiful. Gorgeous, right up, until they killed you. Kilnara's contribution was a creature that existed partially in normal space, and partially in what she described as the hungry dark. A parallel dimension where the laws of physics and
were apparently more suggestions than rules. The thing looked like a constantly shifting shadow with too many teeth, and its presence seemed to make the air itself feel thinner. Shadow feeders, she explained, her gaseous form swirling with academic excitement.
Hunt by dragging their prey partially into their native dimension, where they can feed on life energy directly. The process
typically drives victims insane before killing them as their minds attempt to process sensory input from a reality that fundamentally contradicts.
Anya Sharma, everything they understand about existence. Remarkable, Professor Vithera murmured, though she'd backed up to what was probably a safe distance,
assuming safe distances were even possible when dealing with interdimensional predators. The evolutionary pressures required to develop transdimensional hunting
strategies must have been extraordinary. Each presentation was more terrifying than the last. A parade of evolutionary nightmares that represented
the containers down gently and turning to face the class with that same mysterious smile they'd come to associate with
her. I want to point out something interesting about today's presentations. She gestured toward the still active containment fields surrounding
the other specimens. Every creature you've seen today is what we might call an honest predator. They look dangerous.
They act dangerous. They make no attempt to hide their lethal capabilities. They're apex predators, in the classical sense. And your point is? My point? Fiona replied, her smile widening just a fraction. Is that sometimes the most successful predators are the ones that don't look like predators at all. She knelt beside the first container and began unfastening the simple latches that held it closed. No energy fields, no specialized containment protocols, just ordinary mechanical latches that anyone could open with their hands. Ladies,
gentlemen, and beings of various classifications, she announced with the kind of showmanship that would have been perfectly at home.
In a circus, I present to you Earth's most efficient killing machines. The container opened with a soft click, and Fiona reached inside with complete calm. What emerged was, well, it was small and fluffy, and making a soft,
rumbling sound that could only be described as contentment.
The amphitheater was dead silent as Fiona lifted a small, fuzzy
creature and placed it gently on her shoulder. It was roughly the size of her head, covered in what appeared
to be dense, soft fur with large eyes and small, rounded ears. As the class watched in growing confusion,
as no contail is. She opened the second container and extracted a nearly identical creature, which took up residence on her other shoulder. Both
animals began making that same soft, rumbling sound, and one of them started rubbing its head against Fiona's neck in
what appeared to be affection. Said Bumptel, their skin cycling through confused patterns of yellow and green.
Are those your predators?
They are indeed.
But they're small, and they appear to be showing you affection.
Oh, they absolutely are.
This behavior is actually
central to their hunting strategy. The class exchanged bewildered glances after witnessing interdimensional shadow creatures and plasma-breathing drakes.
They were being presented with what appeared to be living, stuffed animals that seemed more interested in cuddling than conquering.
Professor Valara cleared her throat. Miss Fiona, while I appreciate creative interpretations of the assignment, these specimens don't appear to
exhibit any obvious predatory characteristics. Perhaps you could explain how creatures that seem so benign qualify as the most
efficient killing machines on your planet. Fiona's smile turned absolutely predatory.
Oh, Professor, she said softly. I'm so
glad you asked. Fiona reached into her jacket and produced what appeared to be a simple data pad. No
fancy holographic displays, no dramatic lighting effects, just a basic tablet that wouldn't have looked out of place in
any office building across the galaxy. But as she activated it, and the first statistics appeared, the atmosphere in the
amphitheater began to shift. Allow me to introduce you, she said with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather.
To Felis Catus, the domestic cat. The creatures on her shoulders continued their soft rumbling, occasionally rubbing against her neck.
With obvious contentment. One of them, a small orange and white individual, began what could only be described as kneading
motions against her shoulder with its tiny paws. Now, I know what you're thinking, Fiona continued, glancing around at the
sea of confused faces. These don't look like apex predators. They're small. They seem friendly. They're making sounds that
suggest contentment rather than aggression. And you'd be absolutely right. They don't look dangerous at all. She touched the
screen of her data pad, and a series of numbers appeared on the amphitheater's main display. But here's where
things get interesting. These creatures have a hunting success rate of approximately 96%. The number hung in the air, like a challenge to everything the class thought they understood about predatory efficiency. Moxai's crystalline structure flickered with disbelief. That's impossible, he managed. The Voran Spine Ripper only achieves 68% hunting success, and they can phase through matter. Oh, but it gets better, Fiona said, advancing to the next screen with obvious relish. On Earth,
North America. Globally, the number is closer to 100 billion confirmed kills annually.
Profound.
Vathera's compound eyes focused intensely on the display. Per year. Conservative estimate, Fiona replied cheerfully. And that's just the
kills we know about. These hunters are remarkably efficient at disposing of evidence. Bumptel's skin had gone completely white.
A sign of shock in their species. But they're so small. But size isn't everything in the predator
game, Fiona said, and suddenly her tone shifted to something more academic, more clinical.
Let me show you what
we're really dealing with here. She approached the center of the presentation area and gently lifted one of the creatures. The orange and white one, from her shoulder. It remained completely relaxed in her hands, continuing its soft, rumbling sound. Observe the physical adaptations, she said, and suddenly her voice carried the authority of someone who knew exactly what
they were talking about. Retractable claws made of keratin, harder than most synthetic materials. She gently pressed on the creature's
paw, and 5 needle-sharp claws extended with surgical precision. They gleamed under the amphitheater's lights like tiny surgical instruments. These claws can extend and retract in milliseconds, Fiona continued, allowing for silent movement when retracted and devastating cutting power when extended. The rear claws are particularly interesting. They're designed specifically for disembowelling prey. The creature in her hands began purring louder as if pleased by the attention. Several students instinctively leaned back in their seats. Night vision, approximately. 8 times more effective than baseline human capability, Fiona continued, moving on to the next point with the methodical thoroughness
of a researcher who'd spent considerable time studying her subject. Binocular vision optimized for tracking rapid movement, hearing range extending
well into ultrasonic frequencies. She set the creature down on the floor of the presentation area, where it immediately began what appeared to be a casual exploration of its surroundings. But there was something about the way it moved. Fluid.
Silent, purposeful, that suddenly made it seem less like a pet and more like something conducting a tactical assessment. But
The real innovation, Fiona said, isn't in their physical capabilities. It's in their hunting strategy. She pulled up the next screen on her datapad, and a complex behavioral chart appeared on the main display. These creatures have evolved
what might be the most sophisticated hunting psychology in Earth's biosphere. They don't just kill prey, they play with the
at first. This serves multiple purposes. It exhausts the prey animal, prevents escape attempts, and provides entertainment for the predator. The orange creature had found a small piece of debris on the floor, probably a discarded stylus from one rat
of the earlier presentations. What happened next was like watching a masterclass in predatory behavior compressed into 30 seconds.
You mean they've domesticated another species?
Not exactly, Fiona replied, and her smile was now definitely predatory. See, that
would imply they're dependent on the other species for survival. But these creatures are perfectly capable of surviving independently.
What they've actually done is much more sophisticated. She gestured toward the 2 creatures who had finished their demonstration.
And were now sitting calmly grooming themselves with the kind of casual indifference that suggested interdimensional amphitheaters were just another day at the office. They've convinced the dominant species on the planet, humans, to provide them with food, shelter, medical care, and protection while maintaining their full predatory capabilities and territorial independence. In return, they provide companionship. The word hung in the air like a revelation that recontextualized everything they thought they understood about predator-prey relationships. Companionship. Moxhi's crystalline form was flickering rapidly now. You mean they've weaponized friendship? In a manner of speaking, Fiona confirmed. They've evolved to trigger nurturing responses in humans through a combination of physical characteristics, vocalizations, and behavioral patterns. The soft fur, the large eyes relative to body size, the purring sound you've been hearing, all of these are evolutionary
adaptations designed to make humans want to care for them. But here's the beautiful part. They haven't sacrificed any of that.
Their predatory capabilities to achieve this. They're still perfect killing machines. They've just convinced their primary food source to
love them for it. The silence in the amphitheater was a blur. Every student was staring at the 2 small, fluffy
creatures with a new understanding of what they were actually looking at. And the humans? Professor Vela asked slowly. They're aware of this arrangement? Fiona's laugh was rich with dark amusement.
Oh, absolutely. Humans know exactly what these
creatures are capable of. We have extensive documentation of their hunting prowess, their kill rates, their psychological profiles.
And yet, despite all of this, humanity decided to do nothing.
It's adorable. The phrase hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Several students made sounds of distress. Bumptail's skin went through a rapid cycle of colors that suggested their species equivalent of a panic attack. You think...
Mass extinction is adorable, Kilnara managed to gasp. We think they're adorable, Fiona clarified. The mass extinction is just...
Tuesday. And with that single word, something fundamental shifted in how every alien in that room understood.
And with that single word, something fundamental shifted in how every alien in that room understood humans. Because if orange creature chose that moment to approach Professor Belthara, looking up at her with large, innocent eyes and making soft chirping sounds that seemed designed to trigger every nurturing instinct in the biological spectrum. Professor Velara took several rapid steps backward, her compound eyes wide with something that might have been the beginning of true understanding. "Miss Fiona," she said carefully.
Exactly.
"What does this arrangement tell us about human psychology?" Fiona's smile was radiant.
"Oh, Professor,"
she said softly. "I think you're starting to get it." The amphitheater had taken on the quality of a theater, just before the final act of a tragedy. That moment when the audience realizes they've been watching the wrong story.
Entirely, and everything they thought they understood is about to be turned inside out. Professor Velara stood frozen several meters
away from the small orange creature that continued to gaze up at her with those impossibly large eyes, making soft
sounds that seemed engineered to bypass rational thought and trigger protective instincts directly. "You see," Fiona continued, settling cross-legged on
the floor as both creatures immediately moved to arrange themselves around her, like furry satellites. The truly fascinating thing about
this relationship isn't what the cats have accomplished. It's what it reveals about humans. She pulled up another screen.
Population genetics. Breeding records. Morphological changes.
Tracked across millennia. The kind of data that painted a picture spanning thousands of generations. These creatures didn't just domesticate
themselves, she said, her tone shifting to something that carried undertones of pride mixed with something darker. Humans actively
participated in making them more efficient killers. The statement landed in the silence like a stone dropped into still water,
sending ripples of unease through the assembled students. "What do you mean?" Professor Velther asked, though her tone suggested
she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to know. "Selective breeding," Fiona replied with cheerful academic precision. "Over approximately 10,000
years, humans have systematically bred these creatures to enhance their predatory capabilities. Faster reflexes, sharper claws, more efficient hunting instincts.
Improved night vision. Every generation optimized for lethality." She gestured toward the black and white creature, which had begun
methodically cleaning its claws with its tongue, a process that highlighted exactly how sharp those claws actually were. But the truly remarkable part is that humans didn't breed them for protection, or for hunting assistance, or for any practical purpose at all. Humans bred them to be better killers because humans find efficient predators aesthetically pleasing. The words hung in the air like an indictment of an entire species' psychological profile. You find predatory efficiency beautiful. Moxe's crystalline structure and
was flickering so rapidly now it was almost strobing. "We find it magnificent," Fiona confirmed. And there was something in that
her voice that suggested personal experience with that aesthetic appreciation, the perfect pounce, the lightning-fast strike, the surgical precision, and
of a kill. Humans have spent millennia refining these creatures because we find their hunting abilities genuinely beautiful to watch. She stood up, leaving the two creatures to continue their casual grooming, and walked over to the display showing the breeding records. But it gets more interesting. Humans didn't just breed them for efficiency. We bred them for variety.
Different sizes, different coat patterns, different temperaments. We created dozens of distinct subspecies, each optimized for different types of predation.
Cats built like miniature tigers. Cats designed for climbing and aerial attacks. Cats bred and
for swimming and aquatic hunting. Cats engineered for speed that could outrun most ground-based prey. Some breeds were optimized for
hunting in enclosed spaces, what humans call barn cats. Others were designed for urban environments. We have breeds specifically engineered
a stress response that indicated their species was approaching psychological shutdown. You're your predator trainers. We're predator enthusiasts.
In solitary stalking, Professor Bella's compound eyes were tracking the images with the kind of horrified fascination typically reserved for any.
You created an entire army of specialized killing machines. We created
a hobby, Fiona corrected with disturbing casualness. Cat breeding is considered a pleasant pastime on Earth. Humans compete in
contests to see who can produce the most perfect predator. We have shows where we judge them on their physical conformation, their movement patterns, their behavioral characteristics, all the traits that make them more efficient hunters. The orange creature
had finished grooming and approached Fiona's feet, where it began rubbing against her legs while purring loudly. The sound,
which had seemed pleasant and comforting at the beginning of the presentation, now carried distinctly ominous undertones. And the
Fiona, I'm scared.
Even louder, is that humans don't just tolerate their hunting behavior, we encourage it. She pulled up a final term screen and the data that appeared made several students emit sounds of distress. Humans regularly purchase toys designed to enhance
their hunting skills. We create elaborate climbing structures to improve their stalking abilities. We engage them in play that
specifically exercises their prey capture behaviors. We've turned predator training into a bonding activity. Bumptel had gone completely transparent.
A stress response that indicated their species was approaching psychological shutdown. You're your predator trainers.
We're predator enthusiasts.
Fiona replied. And her smile was becoming something that would have been perfectly at home on the face of
any apex predator. But here's the really interesting part. The part that I think you're all starting to figure out. She gestured around the amphitheater, taking in the faces or facial equivalents of students who were beginning to understand
that they'd been asking the wrong questions. You've all been wondering what kind of species would willingly cohabitate with a
perfect killing machines. What kind of psychology would find mass extinction adorable? What kind of evolutionary pressure would produce
beings who think efficient predators are beautiful? The silence was profound. Even the soft rumbling from the two creatures
seemed to echo in the vast space. The answer, Fiona said softly, is that you'd have to be an
even more perfect predator yourself. And there it was, the truth that had been hiding in plain sight throughout the
entire presentation. The reason why Fiona had remained so calm while her classmates discussed their nightmarish specimens. The reason why she found interdimensional shadow creatures and plasma-breathing drakes merely interesting rather than terrifying. Humans, she continued with posts, call persistence predators. We're designed to chase prey across vast distances until it collapses from exhaustion. We have binocular vision, forward-facing eyes, and brains optimized for tracking and pattern recognition. We have sweat to maintain constant body temperature during extended pursuit. We're built for long-distance running in ways that most
prey species simply aren't. But more than that, Fiona said, we're tool-using predators. We don't just hunt.
We engineer better ways to hunt. We create weapons, develop strategies, coordinate complex pack behaviors across hundreds or thousands of
individuals. Every creature. Individuals. Every creature.
Their hunting techniques within individual lifetimes. We adapt faster than evolution itself. The black and white creature had approached the containment field holding Moxhi's Vorthon's spine ripper. Instead of showing any signs of fear or submission, it was studying
the interdimensional predator with obvious curiosity, occasionally batting at the energy barrier with its paws.
And the most beautiful thing about our relationship with these creatures, Fiona said, watching the interspecies predator assessment taking place, is that it's
completely honest. They know exactly what we are. We know exactly what they are. We're both apex predators who've
decided we're more useful as allies than competitors. She turned to phase Professor Vithera directly, and for the first
time since the presentation began, her expression was completely serious. The question you should be asking, Professor, isn't what kind of predators we brought to class. The question is, what does it mean that we consider ourselves the dominant partner in a relationship with Earth's most efficient killing machines? The emergency alarms began sounding at that exact moment, not because of any containment breach or specimen escape, but because the university's security systems had finally finished.
All students, please.
Remain calm, came the announcement over the amphitheater's communication system.
Security teams are responding to a pedagogical situation in bioscience bar.
Amphitheater C. This is not a drill. Professor Valara looked around with profound apprehension as the implications of what she'd just learned cascaded through her consciousness. The humans weren't just another species in the galactic community. They were apex predators who...
The exchange program, she whispered, her mandibles clicking rapidly.
How many humans are currently enrolled in university programs across the galaxy? Fiona checked her datapad with casual interest.
Oh, several thousand by now. We're very enthusiastic about learning from other species. Learning
everything.
Bright and cheerful and absolutely terrifying in its implications. Everything.
Doors at that moment. A full response squad equipped with containment gear, energy weapons, and enough firepower to handle
whatever cosmic horror they'd been told was loose in the building. They took in the scene. One human student,
sitting calmly in the center of the presentation area. Two small furry creatures grooming themselves nearby. And an entire...
Ma'am.
We're gonna need you to step away.
From the hostile specimens, Fiona looked genuinely puzzled.
Hostile? Oh, you mean Luna and Whiskers?
She gestured toward the
two cats, who looked up at the mention of what were apparently their names. They're not hostile. They're actually very
friendly. Ma'am, our analysis indicates those organisms are classified as extremely dangerous predators.
Well, yes, Fiona agreed cheerfully.
But they like me, and that perhaps more than any academic presentation or statistical analysis drove home the fundamental truth about humans that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. They didn't just coexist with perfect killing machines. They made friends with them. As the security teams tried to figure out how to handle a situation that their
training had never covered, Fiona calmly packed her datapad and prepared to leave. Luna and Whiskers, apparently deciding that
the excitement was over, gracefully leaped back onto her shoulders and resumed purring. "This has been fun," she announced.
To the amphitheater at large. But I should probably get these two back home. They have a busy afternoon.
Schedule. Luna has a sparrow population to decimate, and Whiskers needs to terrorize the local rodent community. She paused
at the exit and turned back to Professor Vela, who was still pressed against the far wall.
Oh, and Professor, for next week's assignment on symbiotic relationships, I was thinking of presenting on dogs. Wolves that.
Humans convinced to help us hunt even more efficiently. She walked out of the amphitheater carrying two of Earth's apex
predators like they were beloved pets, leaving behind a classroom full of aliens who were finally beginning to understand what humanity effect meant. The species that had conquered their own planet's apex predators and convinced them it was
a mutually beneficial arrangement was now spreading across the galaxy, making friends and learning everything they could about everyone.
They met, and they thought it was adorable.